Elements are not just the fundamental building blocks of visual design. They're also the core interface through which learners experience interactive multimedia content. In this presentation, I want to explain how interactions are triggered by on-screen events, how specific behaviors can then be assigned to any shape, text, or graphic element in a learning object. I also want to talk about the utility of embed code and how cloud storage has drastically improved how we can share multimedia objects with our learners. But I think what interests me the most about this module is the potential for it to change your mind about PowerPoint as an authoring tool. You've probably spent most of your academic career seeing PowerPoint used poorly to deliver content in a live lesson or presentation. Well, forget all of that. The tutorial for this module will demonstrate how PowerPoint is now an even more comprehensive tool to author multimedia for learners to consume independently. What's the big deal? Well, Microsoft finally built a real publishing platform. It's called Mix, and it's going to change how you build or share presentations. We'll take a close look at Mix in the tutorial for this module, but first, let's talk about element interactions and the screen events that trigger them. Here are two of the most fundamental, on-click and on-mouse over. They're exactly as they sound. Take a look at this treasure chest, for example. If I want to, I can place an on-mouse over event on top of this particular treasure chest, so that when I do that, the mouse is over it and the slide automatically advances to pop up a text box. This is an element that I've assigned an action to, and the action is simply display text pop-up. So the event then is on mouse over. But if I read the directions in this mouse over, this is a cue, and it simply tells the learner, hey, click on the treasure chest and see what's inside. So now I've got another action that I've assigned to that, and the lid opens and I can see the treasure inside. Now this is a very simple and crude example here, but it should show you the distinction between an on-mouse over event and an on-click event. Ultimately, this means that behaviors are simply actions that are performed by the on-screen elements once they're triggered by some specific event. Now, clearly, there are many more classes of element events, but for now, on-mouse over and on-click, that's going to provide us a good enough place to start. In most authoring tools, such as PowerPoint, the most common behaviors that get triggered are links. In more sophisticated tools like Captivate or Articulate Storyline, the behaviors are much, much more complex. But for now, these three are going to provide us with a great foundation to build some engaging content for our learners. Now let's talk about embed code. Embed code refers to the use of specific HTML syntax to determine how remotely hosted content is supposed to display inside a host application, like PowerPoint, or maybe even a mobile app or even a web browser. Take a look at this example. Why is this significant? Why should multimedia developers care about embed code? Well, take a look at what we've got here. This is actually embed code that I've used to grab a Mix object. This is Microsoft's publishing platform. And this code begins with an open angle bracket right here, followed by a tag, iframe, and inside that are simply some parameters that define how that content is supposed to be displayed. For example, the width and the height are self-evident enough. They determine the dimensions that this content will be displayed by. The search attribute tells me where the content is, and so there's a web address. And then frame border, again, exactly what it sounds like. Do I want a border? No, I don't. So there's a 0 there. That parameter is set to 0. And allow full screen simply means that there's going to be a button that I can click on, or my learner can click on, and play the actual content full screen if necessary. So I hope you understand that the HTML syntax is actually very, very logical. It's very simple. But again, let's go back to the other question. Why should we care? Why should developers care about this embed code? And the answer is really simple. Embed code is really another type of design element, and it's one that enables us to build truly modular and scalable interactive designs where objects can compile accurately to display the content, no matter what device the learner is actually using. So the key takeaway from this presentation is that all learning interactions have to be triggered by some type of specific screen event with an individual element, such as clicking a button, for example. Does that mean that every single element in a learning object has to be interactive? Absolutely not. But it does mean that as developers, we need to think strategically about the kinds of interactions we really need. Navigational interfaces have to be usable. which means the design elements that guide progression through the content are intuitive and practical. Assessment interactions provide meaningful comprehension measurement and useful feedback, and element interactions, especially those that trigger the display of instructional content, do so in ways that are consistent with what we know about multimedia learning, especially Mayer's principles. So your job now is to build an interactive learning object prototype. I want you to study the tutorial for this module very carefully because I think once you start developing your own project, you'll have a better understanding of how screen events and element behaviors can create meaningful learning interactions. I'm really excited to see your homework submissions this week. So go forth and conquer, and thanks for watching.